Ash Grove, Pennsylvania, a town where time moved slower and people never locked their doors. On the outskirts of town stood a white two-story farmhouse, neatly trimmed rose bushes, faded yellow curtains, and a single rocking chair that never stopped swaying even when there was no wind. That was the home of Dr. Elsie Hartman. She was a retired nutritionist, 71 years old, always in cardigans, always smiling. To the town, she was harmless. To the church, she was holy. To the children, she was the cookie lady. Every Sunday after service, she'd hand out gingerbread men with handwritten names, even for kids she'd never met. "The Lord feeds the hungry," she'd say, "and so do I." But those who got too close to Elsie's world noticed things. She refused to let delivery men bring groceries past the front step. Her kitchen windows were fogged out with contact paper, even in summer, and once a month, always after midnight, her car would be seen leaving town. Never the same direction, never for long. People whispered, sure, but it was a small town, and Elsie had answers for everything. She said her curtains kept the sun off her antique recipes. She said her monthly drives were for finding inspiration, and the boxes stacked outside her pantry door, just donations. Always donations. But there's one thing about small towns most people forget. Everyone knows everyone, until someone goes missing. Jenny Bloom, 16, left her foster home in Ash Grove in 2003 and never returned. Authorities believe she ran away. Kyle Reese, diagnosed with schizophrenia, disappeared in 2007 after walking to the post office. His medications were found unopened in his apartment. May Lynn, 9 years old. Her pink bicycle was discovered half submerged in a creek, just 3 miles from Elsie's property. 3 people, 3 different years. No connection, at least, that's what police believed. The case files sat in different drawers, different counties, different hands, until 2021, when a retired detective named Robert Glines, revisiting cold cases on his own time, noticed one line, buried in the Bloom report. Last seen near Ash Grove Farm Road, the same road Kyle Reese had been walking, the same stretch where May Lynn had disappeared, and one property sat between all 3 scenes, Dr. Elsie Hartman's. Elsie Hartman's stroke left her comatose. With no living family to grant power of attorney, the township was granted access to the property. An officer was sent to inspect the house for health code violations. What he found turned a routine welfare check into a full-scale crime scene. The pantry in Elsie's kitchen was shallow, too shallow. Behind the row of canned goods was a false wall. When they pushed it open, the smell was the first thing to hit them. Not rot, but bleach, metal, and something else, something warm. A narrow stairwell descended into a chamber, a room with no windows, no color, and no sound insulation. On the floor, a soiled mattress. Against the far wall, a wooden chair, bolted into a rusted metal plate. Beside it, trays, feeding tubes, restraints, stained with what looked like old blood. And something worse, handprints, small, child-sized, pressed into dried food paste on the wall. Near the baseboard, a stack of leather-bound notebooks, each titled Guest Log. One journal entry, dated February 12th, read, "She says I need help digesting. She's helping me heal. She says the world is too loud out there. She says guests don't leave until they're better." What the police found next wasn't just evidence. It was a blueprint. Each notebook tracked a different person, though none by full name. Instead, there were initials, body weights, height changes, fatigue levels, dates, spanning months, sometimes years. Each guest was given a strict feeding schedule, with exact portion sizes down to the gram. Some logs were written in clinical language, others disturbingly tender. He cried again today. I let him rest. I sang for him this time. He mustn't feel punished. Healing is hard. In the margins, drawings. Stick figure bodies, before and after. Faces slackened, limbs thinner, more obedient. The later drawings always ended with one word scribbled underneath: complete. Investigators realized these weren't captives, not to Elsie. To her, they were patients, projects, guests. She wasn't starving them out of cruelty. She believed she was saving them. To understand how something like this could happen, we need to understand her. Elsie Hartman was born in 1950. She spent her earliest years in state-run orphanages, underfunded, overcrowded, and hungry. By her own admission, she went days without real meals. She watched children faint from dehydration. Some never woke up again. Her journals speak often of those years, calling them her silent phase. There's no pain like the ache of hunger when no one notices you exist. She was adopted at 12 by a family of Christian Scientists. She excelled in school, studied nutrition, became obsessed with caloric efficiency and gastrointestinal response. In college, she published an independent thesis, banned by faculty, called Rescue Through Restriction: The Science of Rebalancing the Human Gut. Later, she was hired at a children's hospital in Ohio. She lasted less than a year. Reports claim she experimented on children with eating disorders, using unauthorized supplements, isolating them without consent, and creating her own dietary formulas. She was fired, quietly, without criminal charges. The hospital didn't want press. Elsie vanished, until she surfaced again, years later, in Ashgrove, where she bought a farmhouse with cash, set up her own kitchen clinic, and waited. Not for patients, not for clients, for guests. October 14th, 2019. A driver on County Route 6 called in a man down report just after 5:30 a.m. What they found was a gaunt, barefoot man, shirtless, covered in what appeared to be food residue and bruises. He was nonverbal, malnourished, and terrified, especially when offered food. At first, responders believed he was psychotic or drug-impaired, but when they scanned his fingerprints at the hospital, the result silenced the room. Kyle Reese, missing since 2007. 12 years, presumed dead. No one had been looking for him anymore. Doctors tried to question him, but he flinched at light, refused to eat, wouldn't speak, but he could draw. On the back of a hospital menu, he sketched a crude but haunting image. A wooden chair, bolted to a square base, with tubes coiling into a mouth. The same chair authorities found in Elsie Hartman's hidden chamber. That's when they realized Kyle hadn't escaped the woods. He had escaped the pantry. Authorities returned to the house with renewed urgency. This time, they weren't just searching for evidence, they were searching for bodies. In the rear of the pantry chamber, beneath the floorboards, was a second entrance. A crude hatch sealed with rusted chains, locked from the outside. What lay beneath was darker, deeper, colder. Another room, smaller, stale, and silent. Inside were two skeletons restrained in chairs nearly identical to the one Kyle had drawn, each still wearing remnants of clothing, each logged in the journals, each marked as incomplete. The remains were later identified through dental records. May Lynn, 9 years old, Jenny Bloom, 16. Both had vanished years apart. Both had died in the same room, alone, monitored, documented, until they simply stopped being useful. This wasn't just confinement, One investigator later said, "It was prolonged observation, like lab rats who were never supposed to leave the maze." The news hit Ashgrove like a funeral bell. Dr. Elsie Hartman, the cookie lady, the former nutritionist, the face in the third pew every Sunday, was now the central figure in one of Pennsylvania's most disturbing serial captivity cases. Local parents wept openly. Children asked if the nice old lady with the brownies was bad now. Neighbors gave interviews between sobs. "I gave her my house key once, when I went on vacation. She watched my kids for me. I trusted her." Even the pastor who once prayed with her weekly refused to speak on camera. Fear spread like wildfire, because if someone so gentle, so familiar, so seemingly good could do this for decades, who else was being ignored, and who else might never come home? Meanwhile, Elsie Hartman remained comatose, silent, still, in a hospital bed only miles from the very pantry she built to hold others, and the most haunting question was now being whispered in every home: how many more were there? As the public reeled, experts stepped in, not to justify Elsie Hartman's actions, but to try and understand them. Forensic psychologists described her behavior not as erratic, but engineered. "This wasn't madness," said Dr. Valerie Mendez. "It was methodical. It was structured. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't experimenting out of cruelty. She believed in order, in discipline, in nutritional purity. To her, the outside world was chaos, gluttony, waste, distraction. But inside her pantry, there were rules, measurements, control. She believed she was saving them," Mendez added, "through structure, through digestion." Investigators found dozens of uneaten meal trays still sealed, each labeled by hour, each portioned perfectly, visual motif, plates untouched, forks unused. The food was never meant to be enjoyed, only measured. In one final journal entry, undated, but found near the base of the first chair, Elsie wrote, "Too much freedom makes the body sick, and the mind worse." Elsie's final notebook was smaller than the rest, bound in red fabric, hidden beneath a floorboard near the furnace vent. Inside, only a few pages. The last dated entry, written in delicate cursive, just 3 days before her stroke, read, "I think the next guest might be me." She had prepared a chair, smaller than the rest, cleaner, fitted with a single feeding tube and 2 restraints. There was no entry beyond that, but forensic teams found faint fingerprints. On the inside of the pantry door, she had locked herself in, beat. The final experiment was herself. In total, 17 names were recorded across Elsie's guest logs, but only 3 bodies were recovered. Kyle Reese survived. May Lynn and Jenny Bloom did not. That leaves 13 names unaccounted for. Some experts argue they may have died and been moved. Others believe they were never real, fabricated to support her delusion. But then came the tip, a voicemail, left on a national missing persons line. "I was one of them, I think. I remember a white pantry. I remember the chair. But not the house. I don't remember the house. I don't know if I ever left." Police traced the number to a disconnected burner phone in Delaware. The voice was never identified, but the implications were clear. Was Ashgrove her only house? One map in Elsie's study was marked in red ink. 5 towns circled across 4 states. No addresses, no notes, just dots. The investigation widened. Dozens of cold cases reopened, and one question echoed through every family who had ever lost someone without a trace. What if they were just a guest? Today, the farmhouse remains vacant. No one's bought the land. The pantry door is still intact, though now sealed by the state. Some locals say they still hear noises at night, the creak of the pantry opening, something shifting inside. One responding officer, who refuses to revisit the home, gave a statement off the record. The pantry door doesn't always stay closed. Elsie Hartman died in hospice care in May of 2022. She never woke from her coma. Her journals remain in evidence storage, most of them still unread. The pantry is sealed, the house is empty, but the questions remain. 17 names, only 3 accounted for, 1 map, 5 towns, and a woman who believed control was compassion. Elsie Hartman is gone, but her story, her obsession, still whispers from behind that door. If you think this case ended in Ashgrove, think again. Because out there, somewhere, there may still be others, waiting to be found. If this story disturbed you, share it. If you still have questions, comment below. We read everything. And if you're ready for the next case hiding in plain sight, like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because the next door we open might be darker than the last.